The corresponding business logic module gets executed. During request processing, if necessary, database is accessed. Then some response gets generated. Response is sent back to the dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet redirects the response to the view module. Then view module creates the presentation. That presentation sends back to the client. So this is the cycle as per which the web application that is designed in Spring MVC framework, that web application works as per this cycle, the cycle of the flow of this cycle. This is where we left in the morning session. Now we shall proceed to the next session. We shall proceed to the next topic of this particular session. So till now,
Good evening, sir. Sorry, sir. I would like to say that will you please share these presentations in the class also?
Acha. How can I share?
So in this
which
class, you can send the link for the presentation so that we can download and revise.
where to send the link? Where to send the link?
In the call messages.
Acha, in the call messages. Okay. I need to put it into a link, drive link, then only I can share it.
Okay, sir.
Till now, I have individual presentations. I have with me the presentations.
Yes.
Not in the form of a link.
Okay.
So I have to create the link, then only I can share it.
Okay.
Okay. You do one thing.
Yes, sir.
You can send WhatsApp number of any one of your batchmates. I shall share the link to that WhatsApp number. Then you can share it with yourselves.
Okay.
Any
There
one
is
WhatsApp number, any
there is
one
a group.
WhatsApp number can be sent to me.
No, there is a group of students in which we communicate
Yeah,
with each other.
but I am not there into that group.
I am sending you that link
Okay.
in the in-call message, and from there you can join.
Okay. Then only I will join the group first. Then
I
I
have
shall
sent it
share.
right now. Right now I sent it.
Okay.
You can check it out.
Okay. Okay. I shall join the group.
Yes.
Then I will share the link in that particular group.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Right, sir. Thank you.
So let us move to the next presentations of this session. That is Spring MVC with Bootstrap CSS. Spring MVC with Bootstrap CSS. You must be knowing what Bootstrap is and what CSS is. I assume that You have used CSS in HTML document. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. This feature is used with HTML page to make the page attractive. It will give you a look and feel. Using the features of CSS, the HTML page can be designed in a better way. The HTML page can give you a look and feel effect if CSS is used properly. Now, what is Bootstrap? Bootstrap module in Java, particularly in Java, Bootstrap module focuses on creating a clean and isolated class. It is a popular open source front end framework. It provides with pre-designed CSS, JavaScript components, and utility classes. The purpose is to build responsive web applications. As it comes with CSS, so using the facilities available with Bootstrap, you can design the response that is needed for a client. You can design the response, you can design the presentation that is meant for the client in a better way. So Bootstrap helps the designer to create visually appealing interfaces with less effort, because ready-made modules are available with Bootstrap. It simplifies the styling of elements. Styling of elements matlab, you can design your interface, user interface. You can design the user interface of the web application in more appealing way by using forms, buttons, navigation bars, responsive layouts. And another important feature is the designing will be made in such a way that it can be adapted to different screen sizes. That may be the size of the screen may vary from a mobile screen to a laptop screen or to a desktop screen. Whatever the size of the screen may be, the Bootstrap CSS module, the Bootstrap CSS framework provides you the facility so that the user interface of the framework of the web application will be fitting into that particular screen size. So Springe framework, normally the Springe MVC framework is available with Bootstrap CSS facilities. So Bootstrap CSS is a pre-designed CSS framework that is integrated with Springe MVC so that the functionalities of CSS can be used. That is what is written here. Bootstrap is a free, popular, open source CSS framework. It is directed at responsive front-end web development. It contains HTML and CSS-based design templates for various interface components, such as forms, buttons, modules, images, navigations, etc. All those things can be designed in a appealing way. Bootstrap provides the ability to create responsive designs. And with Bootstrap, the designing process will be much more faster and it will be easier. The most significant feature is the Bootstrap makes the web pages adjusts automatically with all different varieties of screen sizes. The web application, the web page is rendered on a variety of devices and varieties of windows of different sizes, starting from mobile screen size to laptop desktop screen sizes. That is the significant feature of Bootstrap. As I told you, CSS is cascading style sheet. It is a method of adding stylistic components to the web page. HTML is the most common coding language into which CSS components can be integrated. One example is given here. In the example, one paragraph, the developer wants to make the paragraph green. Whatever will be there into the paragraph, that will be displayed as green color. The text will be displayed as green. The text of the paragraph will be displayed as green. To make the text green, simply we have to include this HTML tag in our HTML document. So P is the tag, HTML tag. P stands for paragraph. Style is the property. The value of this property is green. So P is equal to green.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
सर आप ये पीडीएफ भेज दोगे ग्रुप पे?
हाँ ठीक है, मैं दे दूंगा.
पीपीटी भेज दो बस ग्रुप में सर.
हाँ मैं दे दूंगा. लिंक तैयार करके दे दूंगा.
तैयार करके दे दोगे?
लिंक तैयार करके सब. अब I have with me 10 presentations. Okay.
So what had done with the PPT? You can send them.
These are all PPTs, presentations files. There are 10 presentations files.
So
I need to put all the presentations into a single link. I shall share that link with you.
okay, okay, okay.
Okay. So that you can avail all the 10 PPTs. So this is regarding CSS. One example is given. Similarly, there are many such properties available with CSS that can be used in your HTML page so that the page will become more appealing. The page will become more attractive. Another thing, CSS properties can be added with a particular page, but a web application may contain hundreds of thousands of pages, because web applications are very sophisticated applications. Thousands of web pages are integrated together to create a web application. Suppose we want to apply a particular style to all the pages of the web application. There are thousands of pages. We want to apply a particular style to all the thousands of pages available in the web applications. So for that purpose, for achieving that particular task, we need to take the help of custom CSS. So custom CSS can be included at the top of each web page inside the head tag. So within the head tag, the custom CSS can be included. And custom CSS can be created using a file. That file is known as CSS file. In this particular example, the file is named as custom.css. So custom.css is included at the head of the web page within the head tag of the HTML document. So how it can be included? The example is given here. Link is the tag, HTML tag. Link is the HTML tag. So this, using this HTML tag, the custom CSS, custom.css, that is the file that can be included, so that the features available within this file custom.css, that will be applicable globally throughout the web applications. Whatever the number of pages the web application may contain, the features, the style elements that is put within the CSS file, all the stylistic features will be applicable globally to all the pages of the web applications. This is custom CSS. So CSS, custom CSS, and Bootstrap. Actually, Bootstrap is a framework with CSS that is available with the Spring framework. So to make the web page, to make the web application more attractive, so we can use this framework with this Spring framework. Then we shall proceed to another important concept. That is related to database operations. The common database operations are known as CRUD, CRUD operations. Several times I told you that web applications are, most of the web applications are data centric applications. Suppose bank application. Bank application is purely a data centric application. Hundreds of thousands of customers need data, need information from the bank. So using the web application, they get data from the bank. They get information from the bank. Suppose the application of academic institutions. That is a data centric web application. You need to collect important information from your website, from the website of your university. Suppose Indira Gandhi Open University, that has its own web application. Hundreds of thousands of students get information from the website using the web application of the Indira Gandhi Open University. So web application of Indira Gandhi Open University is a data centric web application. Almost all the web applications are data centric. So whenever a request comes from the client, whatever the request may be, when the request comes to the web application has to interact with the underlying database. So transactions with the database is a must during request processing. So to conduct transactions with the database, 4 basic operations need to be performed. These 4 operations are CRUD operations. CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. Create matlab when the transaction is meant for putting something into the database. Some new information are to be put within the database. That is create operation. Read operation matlab the existing information from the database. If you want to retrieve the existing information from the database, then that transaction is a read transaction. So create is putting something within the database. Read is getting something from the database. Then update. Update operation is meant for making changes in the existing information into the database. So that is update operation. The web application, when the web application makes some changes within the database. Suppose a customer withdraws money from his account. So account balance is reduced. So that updation must be done, must be reflected. So this is an example of update operation. When the customer withdraws money, the account balance gets updated with the new balance. So that is update operation. Then delete. Delete operation, as the name indicates, when a customer closes the account, then that particular information gets deleted from the database. The information, all the information related to that particular customer gets deleted from the database. That is delete operation. So create operation is meant for putting information into the database. A read operation is meant for retrieving information from the database. Update in transaction is meant for making changes in the existing information of the database. Delete transaction is meant for deleting information from the database. So these are the four basic operations that can be performed with the database by the web application. All these operations are performed by the web application on the basis of the request made by the client. So these operations are known as CRUD operations. And these operations can be conducted using SQL. SQL is structured query language. Example is given in the first table. Example is given in the first table. For create operation, first SQL query is to be framed and that is put into the database. So that operation gets performed. For doing create operation, the SQL query is insert into student. Student is the table that carries information of all the students. So insert into student, what information will be inserted? Name and grade. Name of the student and grade of the student. With what values? Person and 10. Person is the name of the student and 10 is the grade of the student. So this new information will be inserted into the student table. Similarly, read operation. Read means retrieval of information. That can be done by using select star from student. All the information contained within the student table will be selected and that will be displayed. Update. Update student. Student table will be updated with what? Student table will be updated with grade is equal to 10, where ID is equal to 1. That means there may be hundreds of students into the table. So updation will be made to that student whose ID is equal to 1. So what updation will be made? Grade will become 10th. Then delete. Delete from student where ID is equal to 1. Out of hundreds of students, that particular student will be deleted from the table whose ID is equal to 1. So 4 examples are given to perform 4 operations using SQL statement. This is the standard way of doing, standard way of dealing with database for performing CRUD operations. When it is the case of a web application, then how these things can be done? The second table deals with that. In the REST context matlab, in the morning session, we had discussed what a REST is. A REST application, the web application that is based on REST principle, representational state transfer. REST stands for representational state transfer. This is a principle on the basis of which web application is designed. When the web application is designed on the basis of REST principles, that means that it operates on request response model. When the web application is designed on the basis of REST principle. That means that it operates on request response model. When the
So,
web application,
sir, I want to ask one thing.
hmm,
Sir, the post to delete, we will use this web services of REST to for the crude operation.
hmm.
It is that
What is the question?
I am saying we will
Hmm.
use REST framework for the crude operation,
Hmm.
and instead of using SQL that we are using from previously from the
Hmm.
previous months, and now we will update it to REST framework.
Yes, yes. For performing create operation, you need to frame a post request. Post means something will be put within the database. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Create operation can be mapped with post request. Read operation can be mapped with get request. When you need something from the database, you have to send a get request. So a read operation corresponds to the get request, create operation corresponds to the post request, update operation corresponds to the put request, and the delete operation corresponds to the delete request. When you are working with a web application, when you are working with REST based web application, the CRUD operations can be performed using the request verbs that corresponds to the operations. Create, for create, post request; for read, get request; for update, put request; and for delete, delete request. If you are using a standalone application, then you can use SQL language. If you are using REST based application, web application, so the corresponding request verbs you have to use for performing the respective operations. And the request verbs are post, get, put, and delete. We shall discuss all these things in more detail sometimes later. One thing is, all these operations, CRUD operation, there is a ready-made framework for this. To perform the CRUD operation, there is a ready-made framework. The ready-made framework is, in the morning session, I had told you what that particular framework is. To deal with database, to deal with mapping of the database. The ready-made framework is Hibernate. So using Hibernate framework, we can perform CRUD operations, CRUD operations. We shall discuss the Hibernate framework, the architecture of Hibernate framework in detail in latter part of this session, today's session itself. Before discussing about Hibernate, let us look into the functionalities of Spring Boot. Already we have discussed about Spring MVC in detail. Let us discuss some more details about Spring Boot. As you know, in the morning session, we had a comparison between Spring Boot and Spring MVC. The major difference lies in Spring Boot and Spring MVC. The major difference lies in Spring MVC, a lot of configuration is required. In Spring Boot, it supports auto configuration. So as it support auto configuration, it is easier in Spring Boot to develop a application in comparison to Spring MVC. Because in Spring MVC, a lot of configuration parameters need to be set. This is number one. Number two is Spring Boot comes with embedded servers, which is not in the case with Spring MVC. So this is also an advantage of using Spring Boot. It comes with embedded servers. The framework itself carries the server. There is no need to use external servers. The framework itself has its own server. This is number two. Number three is Spring MVC is particularly meant for developing web applications, whereas Spring Boot, any enterprise applications can be designed in Spring Boot. So these are the features of Spring Boot that makes the difference as far as Spring MVC is concerned. All these things are written here, I think. Spring Boot is an extension of Spring framework with auto configuration and embedded servers. This is what is written here. Auto configuration facilities is there and embedded server is there with the Spring Boot. And it is a utility project. It is a utility framework and meant for developing production ready Spring based applications with less effort, reduced cost and minimal configuration. So Spring Boot, it supports the development of web application as well as other applications with minimum lines of code. So these are the features of Spring Boot. Auto configuration is a feature. Dependency management. Dependency management. What objects depends on what other object. The managing the dependencies becomes easier in Spring Boot due to the availability of some starters. Some ready-made starters are available with Spring Boot. Using those starters, dependency management can be conducted. What are the starters? We shall discuss. What are the starters available? These are the starters. These are the starters. So primary objective of these starters are, they are used for dependency management. So Spring Boot provides a number of starters. Due to the availability of these starters, the development process becomes easier. The development process becomes easier. So what are the starters available? Some examples are given here. One is web starter. Another is JDBC starter. Third one is validation starter. Fourth one is security starter. So as the name indicates, web starter, it is used for building web applications, including RESTful applications. It uses Tomcat as the default embedded container. So Tomcat is embedded. When we implement this particular starter, Spring Boot starter wave, this is the naming pattern of starters in Spring. So using this component, this starter component, web applications can be developed. All dependency objects are available within this starter. When you want to implement this starter, So all components needed for developing a web applications are available to you. JDBC starter. As the name indicates, JDBC helps you to make connection with the database, which is at the back end. So using the Tomcat server, the JDBC connection can be established. Connectivity with your application and database can be established using this starter. When you make use of this starter, JDBC starter, it will be helpful for the developer to establish connectivity with the database. Validation starter. As the name indicates, it helps in validation operation. It is used for Java Bean validation with Hibernate validator. So Hibernate is a framework that is integrated with Spring. That framework needs validation before using it. So for performing that validation, the validation starter is helpful. Security. As the name indicates, it ensures, the starter ensures the security for the web application. So all these starters are readily available with Spring Boot. So one of the most advantageous feature of Spring Boot is it is available with starters, which helps in performing dependency management operations. So with Spring Boot, auto configuration is ensured. With Spring Boot starters, dependency management becomes easier. With Spring Boot, application deployment is also easier due to the availability of embedded server. The developer need not have to deploy the application with an external server. As the server is available as an embedded component, it is easier for the developer to deploy the application. Then another thing is production ready features to monitor and manage applications such as health checks, metrics gathering, etc. Health check matlab, suppose the user wants to check the health of the application. The application health can be checked and monitored. Metrics gathering can be made. So this is how the health checking can be made. Application monitoring, network traffic, state of the database, etc., etc. These are all production ready features. All those things can be performed using actuators. Like starters, some components are known as actuators. Some components are available which are known as actuator. Actuators are used for the purpose of application monitoring. So how applications can be monitored? So to monitor a running application, different information can be collected, can be gathered. The informations like info, health, dump, metrics, etc. So there are three actuators, Spring Boot actuators. There are three main features of this Spring Boot actuators: endpoints, metrics, and audit. Example is given here. Suppose endpoints. So /health is a endpoint that gives you the health status of the application. /info is an endpoint that gives you general information about the application. Start metrics is an endpoint that gives the metrics of the application. /environment is an endpoint that gives you current environmental properties of the application. So endpoints are actuators, metrics are actuators, audit is an actuator. So using actuators, the production ready features can be assessed. Production ready features related to the web application can be assessed using actuators. Using starters, dependency management can be conducted. Using actuators, production ready features of an application can be assessed. Our deployment becomes easier due to availability of embedded servers. And auto configuration is an inbuilt feature of the Spring Boot framework. Due to the availability of all these characteristics, it is very easy to understand and develop Spring Boot application. Therefore, it increases the productivity and reduces the cost. So till now, we discussed about different frameworks of J2EE. J2EE provides many frameworks. We can choose any framework for developing web-based applications. Primarily, Struts framework, Spring Boot framework, Spring MVC framework. These are the three major frameworks. As per our requirement, as per our need, we can use any of these frameworks for the development of web-based applications. Apart from these three, there is another framework. That framework is primarily meant for dealing with database. Several times I have told you what this framework is. This framework is Hibernate framework. Let us have a deeper look on Hibernate framework. How to use Hibernate framework to deal with the database. What exactly is the architecture of Hibernate framework? What is the technicalities behind the Hibernate framework? And what is the speciality of Hibernate framework? Let us discuss. As I told you, Hibernate framework can be integrated with other frameworks, J2EE framework, that is meant for developing web applications. Because every web application is a data-centric application. A data-centric application needs a database that is based on a database. A huge database is at the back end of the web application. To deal with that database, Hibernate framework is necessary. Hibernate framework performs ORM operation. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Try to remember the architecture, basic architecture. There are 3 layers: front layer and back layer. Within the front and back, there is a middle layer. The middle layer contains the controller. Basically, servlet is a controller. Servlet plays the role of controller that sits in the middle layer. And database is at the back layer. The servlet contains the code, Java code. Java code is meant for the purpose of performing transactions with the database, which is at the back end. The information contained into the database are relational information. Information are stored into the relational tables. Servlet contains the code which is based on object. So at one side there are objects, at other side there are relational components. So there is a mismatch in the characteristics. Objects has different characteristics and relational aspects have different characteristics. So there is a clear-cut mismatch. To reduce the gap, to remove the gap, a mapping is necessary. That mapping is done by the Hibernate framework. The process of mapping is known as object relational mapping. That is what is written in the first line. ORM is a programming technique for converting data between incompatible type systems using object-oriented programming languages. Whatever I have told you just now, that is what is written here. Incompatible type systems. Object is not compatible with relational data tables. Servlet contains data objects. Database contains relational data. They are incompatible. As they are incompatible, so there is a mapping is necessary. That process of mapping is known as object relational mapping. During object,
एक चीज पूछनी थी.
what?
We are mapping a set of objects with which
Object
objects?
relational. Relational database contains
Object relation
tables.
mapping.
Object relational mapping, ORM. Because
Okay, sir.
database is relational in nature. In database, data are stored into tables. And table is consisting of rows and columns. But servlet deals with the data which is in the form of objects. So at one hand, data is represented by object. At other hand, data is represented by rows and columns. So there is a mismatch. That is the reason why mapping is necessary. So that mapping is object relational mapping. And due to the object relational mapping, performing CRUD operations becomes possible. Otherwise, CRUD operations, create, read, update and delete, the most fundamental database operations. These four operations becomes possible only when there is a mapping, object relational mapping. Until and unless there is a mapping, these operations are not possible. So Hibernate manages the mapping between set of objects and the underlying database. Hibernate manages the mapping between set of objects and underlying database. So it is a pure Java ORM mapper, and it is a persistence framework which maps the objects to the relational database tables. So advantage of Hibernate are: Hibernate is open source, the performance is very high, it is a lightweight framework, Hibernate is database independent. For any database, it will work. It doesn't depend on a specific database. There are two levels of caching available with Hibernate: primary level of caching and secondary level of caching. Hibernate is scalable. There is a feature which is known as lazy loading. That feature is supported by Hibernate. Unnecessary components are not loaded. Suppose the web application needs to load some video components. The web application needs to load from audio components. The web application needs to load some image components. So these components are loaded only when they are needed. So unnecessarily, they are not loaded until they are required. This process is known as lazy loading. So Hibernate supports lazy loading. And most importantly, for performing CRUD operations, HQL, Hibernate Query Language, is integrated with the Hibernate framework. With this introduction, let us move to the architecture. As the diagram indicates, operation is very simple. At one side, Java objects are there, data represented by Java objects. At the other side, relational database management system that contains many relational tables. Objects needs to be mapped with the relational table with ORM, object relational mapping, and that is done by Hibernate. This is the architecture. Hibernate is a 4-layered architecture. Top of the architecture, at the top of the architecture, the Java application is there, your web application. Database is at the bottom. Web application is at the top. There needs to be a connectivity between the web application and the database. Only when connectivity is established, then only transactions can be performed. CRUD operations can be done. So for doing CRUD operations, connectivity needs to be established between Java application and database. So for this connectivity, for establishing this connectivity, some persistent objects and the objects to be mapped with the relational database. These operations are to be done. So in between the Java application and database, there are 2 layers. One layer deals with objects, Java objects. Other layer deals with the Hibernate framework that performs mapping. So 4-layer architecture. Hibernate is a 4-layered architecture. Let us go deep into this architecture. This is the simplest form of architecture. But the underlying architecture contains many things. So let us go deep into it. This is the detailed architectural view. The detailed architectural view. In between the application layer and database layer, there are 2 layers. One layer contains Java objects. Java application carries Java objects. The diagram shows the Java objects in a violet color background. This is a layer. This is the 3rd layer that contains Java objects. Java objects mapped with the database, relational database. For performing this mapping, there is a layer. That layer is transaction layer. That is depicted with the white box. In the diagram, this is depicted with a white box. This layer contains many objects, many components. Configuration component, session factory is a component, sessions, query, first level cache and second level cache. The feature of Hibernate says that the framework is available with 2 level cache, first level cache and second level cache. Let us try to understand this. Before using Hibernate framework, we need to do some configuration. We need to set some configuration parameters. The configuration parameters are set using the hibernate.properties file. As it is mentioned in this diagram, hibernate.properties file that is meant for specifying the configuration parameters needed from the framework to work properly. So configuration module holds that configuration file, hibernate.properties. Next, after configuration, it is written here. Configuration allows the application to specify properties and mapping documents to be used. Then using this configuration object, when configuration parameters are set, a configuration object is created. Using this configuration object, a session factory object is created, as it is depicted in this diagram. Using the configuration object, a session factory object is created. The name is factory. Why the name is factory? Because many sessions can be derived from this particular session. This is a single immutable object. Session factory is a single immutable object from which many session objects, multiple session objects can be created. For each session is to be represented by a session object. There may be hundreds of sessions, and all the sessions will be derived from the single session factory object. That's why the name is factory. It produces many, it manufactures many session objects. That is what is depicted in the diagram. So one session factory object from which many session objects can be derived. Each session performs some operations. Each session performs some transactions. Transactions may be CRUD transactions, CRUD transactions. That's why query object needs to be created. Create is a query. Read operation is a query. Update operation is another query. Delete operation is a query. Whatever operations are performed, all the operations need to be represented through a query. So various query objects are to be created. So session object, one session carries many queries. One session may carry many queries. When a query is created and it is put to the database, suppose a retrieval query, we need to get some information from the database. So query is put to the database. Database is searched for that particular information. If the information is found into the database, that information is sent back. The query retrieves the information. When the information is retrieved from the database, that is temporarily stored into the first level cache. And for more security, again that is stored into the second level cache. So that is the reason where our two levels of cache are maintained. The result of a query can be stored into the first level cache as well as into the second level cache. Why the result of query are stored? Because when the same query is repeated, after some times, so web application need not have to search the database, because already database has been searched and query has been retrieved. When the same query is repeated again and again, then the database need not have to search, only cache has to be searched. There are two levels of cache. First level cache is searched. If query is found there, then it gets retrieved. If it is not there, the second level of cache is searched. If it is found there, then it gets retrieved. If it is not there into the second level cache, then only database is searched. So at the third step, database is searched. That is the reason why there are two levels of cache. So this is the details of Hibernate, the architecture of the Hibernate framework. How the Hibernate framework works. So all these architectural components are described here. So configuration, the configuration object allows the application to specify the configuration properties in the form of a file, that is hibernate.properties. Second, using the configuration object, the Hibernate creates a session factory object which is immutable. Once the session factory object is created, that cannot be changed further. So it is the permanent object, immutable object from which many sessions can be created. Session object. Session object provides an interface to interact with the database. So for doing the interaction with the database, query objects need to be framed. So query objects are framed using Hibernate query language. And there are 4 query objects. There are 4 query operations. And the 4 query operations are CRUD operations. And these query objects, when put to the database, information are fetched from the database. When information are fetched from the database, they are first stored into the first level cache. Then it is again stored into the second level cache. Why they are stored into the 2 levels of cache? Because the similar query, when similar query is framed in future, there is a possibility of framing similar queries in future. When similar query is framed in future, there is no need to access the database again. When similar query is framed, first level cache is searched. If the result is found into the first level cache, it gets retrieved. If it is not there into the first level cache, second level cache is searched. If the result is found into the second level cache, then it gets retrieved. If the result is not there into the second level cache, first level cache is searched, result not found. Second level cache is searched, result is not found. Then only database is accessed. So accessing of database, the number of times database is accessed, that gets reduced by the effective use of first level cache and the second level cache. This is how Hibernate framework works. This is the life cycle. This is the life cycle of an entity, Hibernate entity. Because the diagram shows that the persistence object, Hibernate performs the mapping. So mapping a persistence object to the database. And this is the life cycle of the object. This is the life cycle of the object that gets mapped with the database. A new object is created. There are 2 possibilities. As and when the object gets created, it is not persistent, it is transient. It will become persistent only when it is mapped into the database. Otherwise, it is not persistent. Before mapping, it is transient. The transient stage is depicted here in this diagram with a violet color background. As and when the object gets created, it is transient. After mapping, it becomes permanent, it becomes persistent. So life cycle starts with the creation of a new object, which is transient in nature. When the object gets saved or updated, then it becomes persistent. Before getting into the persistent stage, the object can be garbage collected and it can be removed. Before getting into the persistent stage, the object can be garbage collected and it gets removed. Garbage is collected and it is detached. There is no existence of that object. Another possibility is from transient state, the object can go to the persistent state. When the object is in persistent state, these operations is possible. CRUD operation is possible. Read operation, retrieve operation, update operation, all these things are possible. From persistent stage, the object can be detached. When all operations are over, it can be garbage collected. It can be removed. So object goes through different states during its life cycle. When object is born, the life cycle starts. The life cycle starts with the transient state. From transient state, it either goes to the removed state or it goes to the persistent stage. When it goes to the removed state, it is garbage collected. When it goes to the persistent state, then only different operations can be performed using that object. After performance of all operations, it can go to the detached stage. So these are the 4 different stages through which the object moves. The object moves from one stage to another during its life cycle. This is how the Hibernate framework manages the object. Then something about Hibernate query language. This is a big subject. Hibernate query language is a big subject. I do not know whether you know SQL or not. I assume that you know SQL. But there is a difference between SQL and HQL. Structured query language and Hibernate query language. Almost all similar. Both the languages are almost all similar. The syntax and semantics of using the query, framing the query and using the query remains the same. But the way, the approach SQL follows is different from the approach that is followed by SQL. The main difference lies in the using of class instead of tables. SQL uses a table name. Hibernate uses a class name. That is the difference. In the SQL example, previously we have discussed the examples of SQL. Select star from student. This is a SQL query. Here student is the table where all information are stored. Select star matlab all information are retrieved from the student table. So select star from student. In that case, student is a table. But in case of HQL, HQL doesn't use the table name. HQL uses the class name in place of student name. One example is given here. From student where ID is equal to 1, this query will be framed. From student, here student is the class, not the table. Student class may contain the name of the student, ID of the student. So from class object is derived. From that object contains the ID and name of the student. So from student means from the student object, information will be retrieved where student ID is equal to 1. When student ID is equal to 1 in the student object, that information is retrieved. And the last statement is list is equal to query.list. Those information will be listed out. That will be displayed before the client. So this is how a read query is framed. This is a read query, R operation. And below that is a delete query. Delete student where ID is equal to 1. So that particular information of that particular student will be deleted when student ID is equal to 1. And database will be updated. So this is a delete operation. First one is a read operation. Second one is a delete operation. Third one is a update operation. And fourth one is a create operation. So 4 examples are given corresponding to 4 operations, CRUD operations. This is a big chapter, HQL. You need to study it thoroughly. One example is given for your reference only. So this is how SQL is used. So SQL is integrated with Hibernate framework. So main functionality of Hibernate framework is it performs object relational mapping. So with this, we finish this session. I have been allotted with 4 sessions. Last Saturday, I had taken 2 sessions. And this Saturday, I also took 2 sessions, morning and this one. So with this, I completed my assignment. I hope you get whatever I told you through these online sessions. And I shall share with you all the presentations available with me with the somebody had shared the link. Where is that link? No, please share the link again so that I can share with you all the presentations available with me. Yes. Do you have anything to ask? Let us finish this session. I think you have no questions.
Sir, the practical questions which will come in practical, we will be solving those in practical sessions. This is only theory part.
I think there will be 4 sessions meant for practicals.
Yes, sir.
It will be conducted.
Okay, sir.
I have been assigned with only theoretical part. Practicals will be dealt with by somebody else.
Okay, okay, okay.
Hmm. You make sure of it
Or, okay, sir. All right.
from your study center.
Somehow this theory will only be the base for the practical.
Okay, okay. You will practice whatever you learned from the theory. In the practice session, in the practical sessions, you will learn how to develop web application using Spring MVC, how to develop web applications using Spring Boot.
Understood, sir. Understood. Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
these theoretical concepts will be implemented through practicals. As far
Got
as
it.
my knowledge goes, there must be 4 practical sessions that will be dealt with by somebody else.
Okay.
Okay. You make sure of it from your study center.
We'll check the timetable, like whose name
Your
is there.
your your study center might provide the timetable to you.
Yes, yes, it is published. We will cross check once. Yes.
Okay, then it is all right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for your active participation. I wish all the best for you for your coming days.